So, welcome, dear students, and welcome to today's very interesting class on Tunisia and why the uprising, the most successful or the only successful uprising in the Arab world in 2010-11 took place in Tunisia. Understand that, we have to understand that why the history of Tunisia is important, um, why the culture of Tunisia is important. But there are two major narratives also which you have to question when you go through um, this PPT. The first one is that when Mohammed Bouzazi self-immolated himself, um, there was a narrative that one of the municipal police officers, being a female, had slapped him. And that was one of the reasons that caused a major uproar, that how could a female slap him, and he self-immolated himself. Though later, these charges were nullified, they were not validated. We'll go into the study. But the international media published it at a very high scale, rendering it to be true, which did traumatize the life of the Tunisian municipal police officer. Secondly, it makes you question that what is the weightage of international press and the factual accuracy which it endows, and it then whatever is printed is considered to be the truth. The second most important thing, then, in the case of Tunisia, is to also understand that can there be a transitional coup, as in one particular government transitioning into another government, um, or a president giving up power? Can it be ever peaceful or bloodless? Or is there foreign intelligence involved in it? Or in the name of bloodless coup, there are a lot of intricacies which we never come to know until unless the classified documents are revealed to us. So Tunisia is a case study of that also. Apart from that, Tunisia is very, very important. It is a low cost travel destination. It is twice the size of Austria, so not very huge. Um, it has just one perennial river. Most of it is in the Sahara Desert. And the Roman amphitheaters and many else, the souks, which are the spices market that you can find in West Asia, you can find it there in Tunisia. Tunisia is a very strong trading partner with the European Union for olives, for grapes, the Mediterranean um, vegetables and fruits which are produced. Two-thirds of the population is dependent on agriculture or agro industry. Apart from that, Tunisia is also known for its beautiful golden beaches, which are unforgettable. So, even for those, all of you who are interested in hiking and going for adventure trials, you can go over to Tunisia and travel. So, let us start with what is the Tunisian uprising and why we have to study it, why it is important. So, let us start. The first, as you can see, northern part of Tunisia is comparatively much more populated and urban than the southern part of it. The capital of Tunisia is Tunis, and from where the name Tunisia comes from. It is in the Maghreb region of Africa. Maghreb is the northwestern part of Africa. It is called as Maghreb in Arabic. The population of Tunisia as of now is 12.1 million. Uh, Initially, the pre-Arabs, who were called as the tribes that were called as Berbers, had settled in Tunisia. Then Phoenicians took over. After the Phoenicians, the Roman Empire took over. Uh, when the growth of Islam, the Arab Muslims came over here. In 1546, Tunisia was then controlled by the Ottoman Empire. Eventually, by 1881, it became a French colony. Now, it is very essential to know that Algeria, which is just next to Tunisia, was also a French colony, and Libya here was an Italian colony. So, why this French or Italian connection is important, I will tell you later when we will understand the coup and what it happened, how it happened. Tunisia is one of those modern Arab states where polygamy is not allowed, and it is quite secular. One need not wear a hijab, it is not mandatory. And in terms of women empowerment, Tunisia is the highest ranking in comparatively all of the Arab countries. So now you understand. Remember this place called as Sousse, which is a port city, and we will come back to it when we study about the life of Ben Ali. So, what exactly happened? On 20th March 1956, Tunisia becomes independent from the French colonial rule. And the leadership that is that played a very pivotal role was that of Habib Bourguiba. As you can see on the right side, this is the postal stamp. Here it's written in Arabic. And here, this was published in 2018. And this was Habib Bourguiba. Initially, he was the prime minister uh, of the Kingdom of Tunisia, because Tunisia did not become immediately republic. It became republic in 1957, which is 1 year after becoming independent. So, as soon as in Tunisia becomes independent, Habib Bourguiba becomes the first president. Now, he was a modern secular kind of guy, and there are very different kinds of narratives behind what happened and what led to the loss of his power. So, from 1957 till 87, right, he was the president. So, 30 years. And it continued. What happened in 1987 is a very, very important discourse. Understand it in the discourse that what is happening in 1987. In 1987, your Soviet Union is on the brink of collapsing. Um, USA has become the central superpower, and Tunisia is not an oil producing country. So, in that kind of context, um, it does not cater to the rentier state model of oil, but it has high deposits of iron and phosphates, which it often used to trade with European Union, specifically Germany and Italy. Now, what happens in 1987? In 1987, on November 1987, a team of doctors who were taking care of the then President Bourguiba declared that he was not fit to rule. He was incapacitated and he could not rule anymore. 30 years, anyway, is a long time. And immediately, the man you see on the right, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, he assumed the presidency. Now, here is the question that can you ever have a bloodless coup or overthrowing of power structure? Because there were many different narratives which evolved over the period of time, which we will discuss. Ben Ali was born on 3rd of September 1936. So, during the time of the Second World War. And he passed away on 19th of September 2019. He is no longer alive. He was the second president of Tunisia from 1987 to 2011. So again, 20 plus years. And his parents were coming from a modern income family. And out of the 11 children, he was the fourth one. His father worked as a security guard in the port city of Sousse, which is here. That's why I told you that, remember Sousse. Most of the urban class stays in northern part of Tunisia. So it was there. But he became involved in the anti-French resistance While he was growing up, he was also imprisoned, and because he was imprisoned and jailed by the French authorities, he was expelled from the secondary school and he was never able to finish his secondary education. When he was released, he tried studying at Sousse Technical Institute, but he was not able to get any kind of professional certificate because he had joined the Tunisian army in 1958. So his relation with education was not a clear, transparent line. When he was chosen as in the army, when he was chosen as in the group of young officers, he was awarded training in France. Now, in France, there are different kinds of military academies, the École Spéciale Militaire de Saint, I can't pronounce it. Then School of Applied Artillery in Chalon-sur-Marne, and even in Texas and Maryland in US. So he was in the senior intelligence, matlab jasusi के structure में he was involved, and artillery. He then eventually earned his diploma in electronics engineering from a local university in Tunisia. By 1964, after spending his time in France and US, he gets back to Tunisia and he starts his professional military career as a Tunisian staff officer who is well versed with artillery and intelligence. So, what happens in 1987? We go back to the same question. On 7th of November 1987, the doctors who were attending to President Bourguiba, they filed an official medical report. They stated that he was medically incapacitated. He couldn't fulfill the duties of the presidency. Ben Ali at that point of time had become the prime minister. So he removed Bourguiba from the office in a very so-called polite manner, in a bloodless manner, no one died, and he assumed the presidency himself. When he did accede to power, that day in Tunisia is still known as New Era Day. And see that he has this fascination with bloodless, matlab khoon nahi behna chahiye kind of narrative. I'll just come. So there was this fascination with the word, as you can see, there was this fascination with the word bloodless, which was always there. Now, see, if you are in a country that has had a history of invasions, you had a precedent for 30 years, an average Tunisian, an average citizen would love change. Someone who is young and from the military and someone who has take things in charge coming into power. So that is why it was called as the New Era Day. Or Ben Ali also used the term Tunisian Revolution for it. Though there was no revolution, but he liked the term Tunisian Revolution for 1987 when he got into power. But was it a peaceful transition? Now, I tried getting images of this guy on the right. He's an intelligence officer. I couldn't. So, what is the story? The guy on the left, actually, is Fulvio Martini. In 1999, he was the former head of Italian military secret service. जो जैसे we have RAW and IB. He was the head of the Secret Service, SISMI, and he openly, so almost like after 11, 12 years, he openly declared to the Italian Parliamentary Committee that from 1985 to 87, 2 years before the so-called coup, Italy, or the intelligence agency of Italy, had played a role in creating a coup in Tunisia, so that the President Ben Ali is put as the head of the state. And according to his narrative, Bourguiba wanted to go away. So he was declared incapacitated. Now, how true is that? We don't know, but this was the revelation that Fulvio did. Bourguiba was an important figure in Tunisian independence movement. Someone like, I won't say Gandhi or Nelson Mandela because they are in the narrative of peace, but at least they were in the anti-colonial resistance against the British. So Bourguiba was also in a symbol of that anti-colonial resistance, like maybe like Subhash Chandra Bose, you can imagine. But then he was later declared incapable of leading the country any longer, and 30 years was a long time. At the same time, there was a rise of Islamic integrism. Now, why was this happening during 1980s? Um, this was the time towards the end of the Cold War. Soviet Union had tried befriending a lot of Arab states, but could not because they gave more precedence to Islam, and Soviet Union did not have any kind of religious ideology when it came to bilateral ties. One of the problems which there was in their Cold War policy making. The second thing was also that Algeria had gone through a very, very difficult of revolution against French. It was almost the Algerian Revolution, which started from 1950s. It was a very bloody, very traumatizing, Herculean, and it was complete mayhem. A lot of Algerians died, and French were very brutal, which caused a civil war in Algeria, and the entire status quo was completely dismantled. So, what Fulvio said that we wanted to do this because we did not want another Algeria to take place, a civil war to take place, if there is a bloody coup that takes place. That's why we did it in a very peaceful manner. And he also confessed that he had the directives from the Italian Prime Minister Benito Craxi and Foreign Minister Giulio Andreotti. He also claimed that there was an accord which was brokered through Italy for the peaceful transition of power. Now, it's very interesting that if you try to search about this man, very limited information, obviously because he's from intelligence, he was, so you'll not get it. And I couldn't get any other picture. This is sourced from Wikipedia and other open access images. But it tells you that in many of the, it happened in Iran also, where the CIA will be involved in transition of power. But a lot of times, the European countries, Western European countries, or Northwestern European countries, and US, the intelligence of them agencies have been involved in these kinds of transitions, which look normal and casual at the superficial level. But if you go deeper, and when confessions and revelations take place, you get to know that there was a different story and narrative behind what you considered normal. When Ben Ali becomes the president, one of the first things that he starts is he starts his own military intelligence wing because he has had training in that from US. He promised a more democratic way of ruling the country. He also loosened restrictions on the press. that all the state-controlled newspapers can, have quotes and stories from the opposition parties, and it will be printed in the newspapers, which was initially not allowed. He changed the name of the ruling Dictatorial Socialist Party to Democratic Constitutional Rally, which is RCD. He tried making many constitutional amendments that a president can be elected only 3 times, and every term will be of 5 years. And the third term cannot be just after the finishing off of the second term. So it can be after, maybe, like say for example, if Obama was in Tunisia, now that there have been 2 other presidents and Obama has finished off 2 terms of presidency, he can again nominate himself. According to, I'm talking about 1987. Okay. Now there's something called as couscous. Do you know what is couscous? Anyone? Couscous is a dish. It's made with a variant of rice, vegetables, meat, chicken, and it is considered one of the staple dishes. Very spicy it is, and one of the staple dishes of the Mediterranean, especially Tunisia. And जैसे hummus है तो वैसे ही couscous भी है. If you go to any of these West Asian countries, you should definitely try out couscous. It's very tasty. So there was something called as the Couscous Connection, which happened. Now, what was this? This is just after 4 to 5 years of Ben Ali becoming the president and promising the facade of free press. So Couscous Connection is basically there was an international drug trafficking gang which was very active in Paris. And they used to import heroin and cocaine from Tunisia through Netherlands and Brussels and then distribute it in Paris. The gangsters were caught in 1992 in the international press. It was publicly, narrated and published, but not in Tunisia. Why? Because the younger brother of Ben Ali was involved in it. And not a single newspaper was allowed to mention it in Tunisia. So there goes the free press. In France, his younger brother was convicted in absentia for money laundering and the drug connection. So this gives you the example, answers 2 questions actually right now. The first question is that, is there ever a bloodless coup? Perhaps no. Second, was there a free press in Tunisia? The answer is no. So what is the language that is practiced in Tunisia? The language that is spoken in Tunisia is Arabic, French. French is mostly the business language. Arabic is taught and English is taught. And there is also the Berber ancient language, which the tribal communities use. So it was not published at all. A very difficult time for Ben Ali to hide it. Then the second thing that he started doing was harassing journalists, human rights violations. There was a journalist called as Tawfiq Ben Brik. He criticized Ben Ali and his approaches, and his body was violated in the Tunisian jail. He was imprisoned, harassed. Now, no one gets to know what happens in these jails. There's no surveillance, there's no accountability. So the international NGOs, they started calling Tunisia a very repressive regime. And in most of the cases and studies of human rights and press freedom, Tunisia started coming at the lower level. So now what happens in 2010? In December 2010, which is, I strongly remember, this was 17th, 18th December 2010. Why do I remember? Because I was in London at that point of time, and at that point of time, I used to use Facebook. And suddenly I saw the pages of my Tunisian friends, and they were going mad with joy, going mad, completely, utterly mad with joy, and writing in Arabic and French and posting. And I couldn't understand it because I didn't know Arabic or French and I didn't know Tunisia. But I just felt that the younger population of that time was very, very happy. They did something which was impossible. So there were many things that led to those can be considered as the causes of the uprising. First is understand something. Like whenever I go shopping, I don't take more than 5 minutes. Like I go to the shop, I look, I see, I buy. Because I have a simple principle in life, which is I don't buy because I just want to buy. I buy because of necessity. So I know what exactly I have to buy, and that's it. If you take my mother, then we'll come out next birth, in the next birth, after shopping. So shopping itself, what you can buy, what you can afford, आपकी सामाजिक आर्थिक व्यवस्था tells a lot about where you're coming from. Most of the uprisings in West Asia have started when wheat has become costly, bread has become costly, medicines have become costly, travel has become costly. That is the reason for most of the uprisings. Now, the bread that we have is not the kind of bread that they eat. तो जैसे हमारी रोटी होती है, or better, you look at the crust of the pizza, circular crust, इस तरीके का, या बड़ा सा पापड़, उतने वो that is what they call as bread over there. And that is a staple diet. And it, in a well checked, no inflation or less inflation country, it will not be so expensive that people are so marginalized and poor that they can't afford buying bread. But this started happening in Tunisia. People were not able to afford bread. A lot of the youngsters from the age of 15 to 64, which is the demographic dividend of the society, which is the working population of the society, in which the younger generation of the demographic dividend was unemployed in spite of being educated. There was massive corruption, massive human rights abuse. On 13th January 2011, Ben Ali tried to control the entire protest. He announced that he will not run for another term in 2014. And he also pledged that there will be many steps taken to improve the economy, loosen the restrictions on the press which are there, the self-censorship which is there on the press. But people of Tunis were not ready. And these people were basically the socially marginalized groups that could not afford education, that could not afford employment, that could not even afford medicines or wheat or whatever. And they wanted Ben Ali's immediate resignation. I told you why this is called as the Jasmine Revolution, because jasmine is the national flower. And again, the obsession of Ben Ali with bloodless, whatever meaning it has in his had it in his dictionary. On 14th of January, he, along with his wife and children, they fled to Saudi Arabia. So when I say they fled to Saudi Arabia, a resort is waiting in Saudi Arabia for them for a very lavish life. So Yes, now he's not the president, but he has all the luxury of the world. There was a caretaker ruling committee which was announced, and the prime minister of that time, who was Mohamed Ghannouchi, he stated that there will be democratic elections and there would be, till that time, he would be working as a caretaker. Now, Mohamed Ghannouchi was a Tunisian politician. He was also initially the finance minister of Tunisia. He became the prime minister of Tunisia from 1999 to 2011. And then from 14th of January 2011 to 15th of January 2011, which is one day, he was the president of Tunisia. Because immediately after, you cannot have the prime minister becoming the president. History of Tunisia showed that it was in the name of bloodless coup, it was foreign transition acting. So they created like a committee, as he was said, caretaker ruling committee. And then Fawad Mabaza became the acting president, right? He was a speaker of the parliament. What happened then back in Tunisia to Ben Ali? On 26th of January 2011, the Tunisian government then issued an international arrest warrant against Ben Ali. And they accused him of taking money out of the country when he was running away to Saudi Arabia with his kids and wife and everyone. A lot of money laundering that he was involved with, especially in real estate sector, because Tunisia has a lot of like tourism industry is very high profile. So real estate sector and tourism was where money laundering was done. And he had many kind of different assets which were abroad. Justice Minister Lazar Karoubi Chebi had said and confirmed it. There were videos also which were found that he was stashing cash and jewelry in the presidential palace all the time. The Swiss government, which is known for all uh, uh, the safest banking regime in the world, it announced that it was freezing all the millions of dollars it had in the name of the Ben Ali family. On 28th of January 2011, the Interpol, which is the International Police of US, issued an arrest warrant for Ben Ali and his 6 family members along with his wife Leela. Where were they? Enjoying in a resort in Saudi Arabia, but all of that was done. Now starts the idea of the Tunisian Revolution. People protested for 28 days. We'll never have the data of how many people died. It was not bloodless. Because you're not just fighting the dictator, you're fighting also the military security apparatus that he has. In most of the West Asian countries, you have something called as mukhabarat. Now, what is mukhabarat? Mukhabarat are your intelligence agents, which are, you'll never know that they are from in the intelligence. And they'll be civilians, but having huge surveillance over every area. So it is a very ubiquitous thing in most of the West Asian countries. And Ben Ali, because he got training from that for that, he had his own intelligence agencies of military. So the demonstrations, as you know, was caused because of high unemployment, food inflation, corruption, human right abuse, freedom of speech was not allowed, poor living conditions, especially in the southern part of Tunisia, and the marginalized groups. But this was not something which was unpredictable that this will not happen. I often ask everyone who watches football that why do you watch football? I watch cricket. So I always ask everyone that why, what is so, so emotional or so cathartic about football that you watch it. So in most of North Africa, football is a religion, just like cricket is in India. People are mad about it, about football, mad about it. So Muhammad Baka, in his book, The Revolutionary Chants of Club Africain Ultras, he wrote this that the Tunisian youth was so agitated and so angry all the time, and they didn't know that they would eventually be protesting. So what they used to do was that they would do fan chantings during football matches, because they were angry against the regime. And they would chant like the capital is very angry. We are solitary when we make war to the sons of who oppress us. And hey, regime, the revolution is imminent. They used to do that. That was their um, catharsis. So it used to happen. It was a very regular affair. Now, Mohammed Bouzazi, let's come to him. Mohammed Bouzazi was 26-year-old. He was the only earner in his extended family of 8 people. Bouzazi, his father died when Bouzazi was 3 years old. His mother remarried again, but his stepfather had um, issues, health issues, so he could also not be the breadwinner of the family. Women working, because the Arab societies are quite patriarchal. I myself have seen very long extended families where the sole earner is only a young son or maybe two sons, but not the females. So he operated a vegetable or apple cart that he would sell bananas and he would sell vegetables. And for 7 years in Sidi Bouzid, which is 300 kilometers away from Tunis, he used to work as a vegetable seller. Through one narrative, on 17th of December, a female municipal officer confiscated his cart. Don't imagine the cart like a thela. It's a proper cart that he had to take a loan and buy and then sell it, right? Sell vegetables and fruits through it. Now, there's something called as extra legal property, in the sense that when the cart sellers or whoever is selling whatever they're selling on the roadsides, they don't own that space. They don't pay, so they have to pay rent for that space. So who used to collect that rent? The municipal police. So it used to happen every week that he was, harassed to pay $3. Now, for someone who is not making a lot of money, has already 7 people to feed, it can be quite traumatic if it happens on and it keeps piling on. It was also reported that no, Bouzazi is dead. He dies after 1 or 2 weeks after succumbing to his injuries. But there was a narrative that this police officer came and she hurled abuses to his deceased father and slapped him. This was a false story, which was later because that female police officer was then released. But the trial has traumatized her for the rest of her life. So that day, what happened? Foreign policy is a source of it. They did a research on. They went to Sudi Bouzid and did the research piece on that. So I am quoting directly from there. Bouzazi got into a tussle, a fight with the town inspectors. So she was not alone. She came with a team, and they were accusing him of failing to pay the fine. So they seized his 2 crates of pears, 1 crate of banana, 3 crates of apples, and his electronic weighing machine, which was almost $225. Now, cost of all of that is $225, which was almost all the money that he had invested in creating or being a vegetable seller. $225 is a huge amount even for us. The municipal police officer, whose name is Fedia Hamdi, supposedly slapped Bouzazi in front of the crowd who had gathered up. With his uncle's help, his uncle's name was Ali, he tried asking the authorities to return his property, to return his apples and bananas and the electronic weighing machine. But he got nowhere because in the culture of um, Tunisia, these small business owners who are on the sides of the street were not given a lot of precedence. This happens at 10:30 in the morning. 11:30 a.m. he douses himself, self-immolates himself in front of the governorate building. A lot of bystanders come, they try to use the fire extinguisher, but fire extinguisher didn't have the gas, so they could not work. During the research done by Foreign Policy, it was found that hundreds of small enterprises like Bouzazi were run by Tunisians who did not have any kind of legal identity. They didn't have a legal address, they had no legal right to the market or the road where they were putting their stalls. They had no documents. So their ability to even take a loan and start their own business or have their own rental shop was not possible. Around half of the entire Tunisian workforce was in this extra legal business or informal economy. Half of Tunisian workforce. This case is not only in Tunisia, you have 100 million Arabs in different parts of the country who are also suffering from the same kind of predicament. Say if Bouzazi wanted to legalize his business, somehow he got the papers and everything. He has the proprietorship, which is the ownership, legal ownership, legal rental ownership of that space wherever he wants to sell his fruits and vegetables. It would have required 55 administrative steps. The bureaucracy was so complex, and 142 days, and almost $3,233 of investment, which was 12 times what he was earning monthly. And when you rent a place, you have the maintenance cost, exit cost, so many things. So even if he would have gone into the formal economy of it was impossible for him to afford it, which was one of the major reasons behind the uprising in Tunisia. So when the news spread throughout the Arab street, now I don't mean the Arab street like streets in Tunisia, I mean Egypt, Libya, Syria, everywhere, that Bouzazi has self immolated himself, which is considered a sin in Islam, and seen as the perspective of, with the perspective of martyrdom, millions of people understood the reason, and they fought. The research by Foreign Policy showed that 53 days after 17th of December, at least 35 more extra legal businessmen or informal vegetable sellers, fruit sellers, shopkeepers throughout West Asia, 35 of them, they self-immolated themselves. All of them burned themselves across the Arab countries. Today, Bouzazi's body is in a modest cemetery in the outskirts of Sidi Bouzid. His family has moved to Tunis. According to, there are rumors, but one doesn't know if it is true or no. The house rent is being paid by a documentary filmmaker who wants to make a movie on Bouzazi's life, though Bouzazi's mother has strongly denied it. A lot of neighbors and the community eventually said that, oh, the only winner of the Tunisian Revolution was Bouzazi's mother, as a slap, you know, because the conditions have not become better for anyone else, even now. Here we come to the lady Fedia Hamdi. As you can see, Fedia Hamdi in this AFP images, AFP source of Getty Images, believed strongly that she was used as a political pawn by the Tunisian president Ben Ali. She was jailed for 4 months. Now, what happens to a woman when she is jailed? No one knows. In a country which still has or is infamous for human rights abuses. Hamdi was later found not guilty because only one person had seen her slapping. If she had slapped in front of the entire crowd, right? So many people would have seen her slapping. Many people will come over and say that, yes, yes, we saw this woman slapping. Only one person saw her slap. And that person also, he was a trader who had a grudge against her. There were 4 witnesses who later testified that she had not slapped and there was no physical confrontation. So now these are like the paradoxes left in history, which will never be solved, whether it took place or didn't. Fedia Hamdi, she went on for a hunger strike in the prison till the time the doctors had to intervene and stop it. Till now, she remains traumatized by her experience. Her hands keep trembling. She walks with a stoop. She was traumatized to that level because everyone blamed her for a man burnt himself because of you. That is a very big accusation. She has not been able to sleep properly. She finds eating very difficult. When she was asked by Guardian, this report was by Guardian, she said 2 things. One, the how the international media covered the entire slapping narrative without investigating it, and how the public perceives international media and whatever is written in international media to be true. Which is something that we also have to think about. She was then asked by one of the reporters of The Guardian, which is a British newspaper, that does she want to return to work? She said, absolutely. I'm convinced that justice is important. We should all believe in the law. Now, why am I a bit disillusioned? Uh, because there were 2 failures. One failure at the higher cost was Mohammed Bouzazi and 35 other. 35 is the official report, so there'll be many more of people self-immolating themselves. That the economy not able to help the socially marginalized, economically marginalized communities. B, how easy it is to vindicate a woman. 4 months is a long time. How many women are police officers? Though, when you compare, when we will towards this month study about various countries like Egypt, Libya, and others, you'll get to know that at least Tunisia was a better model of what happened after the Arab uprising. They were able to adopt democracy and political pluralism. Their cabinet has a lot of women representatives. But the cost of living has gone up tremendously in Tunisia. It has become very expensive and the inflation is very high as we speak right now. All of the reasons why the protest took place. So, with this, we end this class. The next class will be what happened after the Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia. What is the condition right now? Politically, socially, culturally, economically. And then we'll move later to Egypt and Libya and Syria. Thank you for your presence and